President Muhammadu Buhari has launched a new long-term national development plan called Nigeria Agenda 2050. This plan is aimed at increasing real gross domestic product growth by 7%, creating 165 million new jobs, which will contribute in reducing the number of people living in poverty by 2050. The plan will also ensure that the country attains a per capita GDP of $33,328 per annum, placing her among the top middle-income economies in the world by 2050. The president also said that given the measures already in place for continuous plan implementation, successive administrations will find the document useful in the delivery of electoral promises. That'll be the crux of our discussion next. So joining us in our Abuja studio is member the National Development Plan 2021 to 2025, CEO Vista Resources Integrated, Consultancy Policy Analyst, Dayo Alao. It's nice to have you join us in the studio now.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
All right, now let's talk about this Agenda 2050, the Nigeria Agenda 2050. Recall that Nigeria had set various targets in the past. We remember Vision 2000, Vision 2010, I think, or 2020. We had that. We had the MDG goals, which Nigeria was signatory to. We had the SDG goals. Now the MDG was upgraded, and then we have SDG going on. In all of these parameters, we were not able to significantly meet a lot of the targets that were set. What is different about the Nigeria Agenda 2050 that will give hope to Nigerians and turn around the issues that Nigerians complain about?
So it's a very, very interesting plan. It speaks to most of what Nigerians would expect from a plan like this, in terms of macroeconomic stability, per capita income increase, also in terms of unemployment rates dropping, poverty levels being reduced. However, the interesting thing about this document is that it is given the unpredictability of macroeconomic indicators over the longer term. It speaks to specific indicators. It also speaks to per capita income. It would have been improved if it had stuck at the broader level of the SDGs in terms of looking at reducing poverty alleviation, ensuring water and sanitation for all, and then it's a perspective plan. So I would have expected that it would, for my opinion, have stayed at that level of 35,000 feet, giving broad sweeping guidance for successive administrations to align with. Although it specifically mentions that the implementation of the Nigeria Agenda 2050 will be broken down by some successive medium-term plans. And we're in the middle of the medium-term development plan 2021 and 2025 now. So in terms of the broader aggregate level plans that are included in this document, it speaks to a lot of what Nigerians are expecting and be looking to give sort of guidance to the incoming administration in terms of the longer term plan. However, I prefer to stick to the shorter term plans because it's easier to reasonably predict the macroeconomic indicators and some of the external shocks that may impact planning. But on the longer period, I'm sure we are all aware that the plan says it will give a per capita income of about $33,328 in 27 years' time. However, we are aware of what is currently going on in the world. If we have another Ukraine war or some other external shocks that will impact macroeconomic indices, then it may impact the overall planning. So I think that the really good document to sort of really look at is the medium-term development plan. The agenda document is a fantastic document. However, again, like I mentioned, given the unpredictability of macroeconomic indices and possible external shocks to these plans, it is quite specific and would have, sort of stayed at the broader macroeconomic level of maybe sanitation for all, clean water for all, speaking to like artificial intelligence, interconnectivity of, all the state capitals, devolving more powers. So it speaks to a lot of this at, the initial level, but it goes then into a lot more detail, which, in my opinion, we would have left to the medium-term development plans that are meant to contribute to this agenda document.
I could see your countenance when you said the Nigeria is actually meant to realize over $33,000, 2050. You were smiling because you know that some of these things might be quite ambitious, and then you went ahead to say that depending on the situation of the maybe global issues that are happening globally. But then I would like you to speak to the specific sectors or areas, which the NDP 2050 is, we prioritize in order to achieve sustainable and inclusive development.
Okay, so the medium-term national development plan, looks at, in the shorter term, to raise about 10 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. These are really aggressive targets. But before we even get into, a lot of, the specifics of the plan, I think, we need to first of all take a step back, and sort of look at, where we are as a country, a rising debt, a recent report by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, already said that, sub-Saharan Africa is facing, like a funding crisis, whereas we have the Nigerian Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan, and recently African Development Bank said we would need an estimate of about $100 billion to invest in infrastructure over annually, over the medium term. So for me, I think we need to sort of look at where we are in terms of the indicators that we have put into this plan. We first of all need to understand how many people are really in Nigeria. Recently there was supposed to be census, but I think it was a good idea to leave it to the incoming administration, because truly, in order to make plans adequately, we need to really understand how many people are really in Nigeria. I think the incoming administration will sit back, look at where we are in terms of this plan, because I haven't seen any recent reports released by the National Steering Committee and the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning, which is meant to give updates on where we are in terms of this plan. So it will be interesting to see how the new government comes in, looks at the plan, take stock of where we are, and then look at how we address whatever gaps we are facing in terms of that plan. So if we're looking to raise 10 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years, how have we done? We're midway through the 2021-2025 plan. We need to take stock and understand where we are in terms of that plan. Because, traditionally, you mentioned a lot of the previous plans, Vision 2020, the ARGP, the transformation agenda. A lot of these plans haven't really met their targets. Where we constantly have failed is the tactical and the operational implementation and monitoring and evaluation of these amazing plans that we've developed in the past. So, but the medium-term national development plan took stock in terms of reviewing previous plans to identify whatever gaps, before coming up with that medium-term national development plan. However, again, from my perspective, I haven't seen official, releases on where we are in terms of progress against this plan. And I think it's about time we really took stock and asked the right questions in terms of where are we, and then we can address the gaps to try and meet the targets.
All right, let me follow up with this. The point there is, at this time when the current administration is leaving the platform and a new government is coming in, it is always expected that when a new government comes on board, they come up with their programs and their agenda because they have their projection, they have their priorities and all of that. Do you think that as much as it's a good document and it has good intention, how, from your perspective, how do you think the new administration is going to flow with what the document has and what it stipulates?
So I think, it's important to note at this stage that government is a continuum and there are no starts and stops in government. If, the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning, which is the apex planning organization of Nigeria, has come up with a plan, I would expect at least, given that the incoming administration has said, it is going to also focus on increasing macroeconomic stability and growth and development for Nigeria, would look at this document and, sort of take stock again of where we are. I'm just, sort of reiterating that very important point. I think one of the key issues we've had in the past in terms of, implementing plans has been policy continuity. So it will be interesting to see how the new government, reviews this document. What is important to note, again, when I said government is a continuum, is that, there will be many people who have participated in this plan who would remain under the incoming administration. So for me, I think that, since we already have a medium-term national development plan, what the right action to take is to take stock of where we are, understand the gaps in terms of reaching the objectives of this plan, and then realigning, if there is a need, the plan so that we can meet the objectives. And if, we know reasonably with, all the evidence, inflation is currently over 20%, unemployment rate is approaching about 40% in Nigeria, inflation is just as high. So it will be important to just sort of take stock and then understand, the programs and plans that are already in the federal budget, because it's important to align the federal budget with this plan. And then, ensuring that, we sort of look at the ongoing projects that will bring the best value for money for Nigerians as a whole. And then if there is a need, readjust our plans, to be able to meet these targets.
Right. Very quickly, we have just a few minutes to go. Just few days to the inauguration, the dollar has actually hit $760 to Naira. We know that this is 2023 and 2050, NDP 2050. A lot of things definitely will happen in between. So if I may ask you, what measures are being taken to ensure that the plan is adaptable to changing circumstances and can withstand potential future challenges very quickly?
So, I am not a staff of the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning. So I think, it would be good to direct some of these questions to those who are in the right positions to give an update. But again, we speak about all this. I mean, earlier at the start of this discussion, I had mentioned that, the unpredictability of macroeconomic shocks sort of makes it really hard to be able to say, I mean, for example, the GDP, the per capita income of $33,000 as of today, if we apply a discount rate of 10%, is about $2,500. Is that what the per capita income is as of today? I think no. The answer is no. The World Bank recently, estimated that, about 90% of Nigerians are living below the poverty line. So it will be really important, to see what the incoming administration, puts forward as their core targets. But I mean, I think in terms of suggestions, I would, suggest that the incoming administration focuses on, some of the core areas, picks, a few of the key areas that we know will spur economic growth over the medium term, and focus on addressing the gaps within those industries. Then also, the medium-term national development plan speaks to government accountability. I think that the current cost of government is quite high, and a lot of critics have constantly spoken about this. So it'll be interesting to see how the new administration comes up with its own policies and programs. But as a guide for policy continuity, I think the medium-term national development plan is a really good plan, one that should be reviewed and stuck with. In terms of the National Agenda 2050, it's more longer term, and I would rather, stick to the earlier part of the document that speaks to the broader-based goals, which, in my view, such longer-term perspective plans, should stay within the confines of.
Okay. Well, we have to leave you here now. Dayo Alao, a member of the National Development Plan 2021 to 2025, and the CEO of Vista Resources Integrated Consultancy. Thank you very much for talking to us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you so much for having me.